Hey, what's going on? It's Dave back with Blockbuster Underground on another Sunday stream. Today we're going to do something a little different. I've been meaning to do a video about this for a while now. Seeing as how I worked at Blockbuster for the number of years I worked there, across multiple locations, and my experience having worked at a mom and pop video store when I was a kid. That was basically my first job. I think it's time we sat down and discussed exactly what the fuck happened to Blockbuster Video. Because there's all sorts of theories out there, but from somebody that's looked into this, studied it, lived it, I think I have a pretty unique perspective that I could offer, that hopefully hasn't been regurgitated to hell by 100 other channels over the last, what was it, 13 years since they closed? 11 in some cases, except for Bend, Oregon, of course. So anyway, so before we get going here, sip of beer to begin with. One thing I'm going to ask you guys is hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. It helps get traffic here. Hopefully someday before I'm 150 years old I can maybe monetize this channel. But if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. It helps out. Hit a like on the video too. So let's get down to this. How it all started. Okay. Been a movie geek my whole life, as you all obviously know. 88, I was living in Quebec, in Lac Brome, Knowlton, and got a job at the local video store there. Complete fluke. I walked in there and I was like, hey, you guys hire? And he's like, oh yeah, actually I need somebody. And I worked there for probably 2 years, on and off. And it was fun. It was pretty laid back. I mean, this was back in the 80s in Quebec where you could still smoke inside. So yeah, you know where I'm coming from. Pretty small store though. Pretty busy though, considering it was a small village outside of Montreal. But all we carried was VHS. That was it. And it was basically just, come to work, throw a movie on. Customers come in, cash them out, boom. Sit there, have a smoke if you want, whatever. If I was hungry, close the store for 5 minutes, run across the street to Min's, get a burger. But that basically trained me in a way for what was going to be coming next, which was Blockbuster. Living in Toronto at that point, this would have been 91, I think. Yeah, 91. And got a job at the store, Yonge and Eglinton. Was literally a 10-minute walk from where my apartment was. Worked an average of 60 plus hours a week usually. Yeah, if anybody called in sick, first person they'd call would be me. So I was making some, well, I mean, 90, 91, it was okay money, I guess. Still in the era of the VHS. I'm pretty sure they'd started renting games by that point. But yeah, I remember getting Terminator 2 came out on VHS, and we got like 195 copies. And this was back in the day where they didn't send them to you prepped like they did in the future. It was like literally unwrap the VHS, print the frickin' insert, grab a case, put it in there, boom, 195 times. It's like, Jesus Christ. It was a chore. But those were still fun days. I mean, I remember they were sending those big, like, theater-sized those cardboard standees you get in the movie theaters. They'd be sending those to the store, and 9 out of 10 times we wouldn't use them. So we'd either sell them off, or I'd take them back to my place. I had a fucking Terminator display in my place with the glowing red eye and Arnie's glasses and shit. It was wild. But, yeah, it was pretty fun. Dropped out of the Blockbuster game for a while. It was 99 2000 was the next stint, where I was in Florida, St. Pete's, Florida, and got a job there, part-time, basically shift lead, I guess would be the equivalent of what they are now. And it was a fucking blast, man. DVD was just coming in, so we were starting to transition everything over. Games are still a thing there. Music, we were still selling fucking magazines at that point, and CDs, which they got out of that pretty quick. Um, it was a lot of fun though. I mean, obviously, we're living in Florida for Christ's sake. I was living in my parents' condo on the beach, working at Blockbuster, and it was just like, are you kidding me? I remember we'd close at midnight, and on my way home to the condo, there was this. It was on Gulf Boulevard. It was kind of like a bar, but it was still a liquor store, and they'd be open till 3 a.m. So I'd be driving home from work at midnight, and I'd be like, yeah, stop. They had Labatt Blue, so well, it wasn't. It's not this Labatt Blue. It was like fake Labatt Blue. It still did the job. But yeah, they were open till 3 in the morning. So I'd grab a 6 pack on the way home. Get back to the condo, crack a beer, sit out on the balcony, and just unwind for an hour or so. Maybe play some video games, listen to some music. Good times though, good times. I I don't keep in touch with the people I worked with there, but I still remember them all, like Heather and Shannon, Daniela, Scott. Oh my God. Anyway, trip down amnesia lane. So I got fired from that job for being Canadian because I didn't have a green card. That was a fun day. I remember the DM came in, new DM, and her first order of business was, "Can you come to the back?" I'm like, okay. Did she want to say, "Hey, how's it going now? Meet and greet?" And she's like, "You don't have a green card." I'm like, "No, I don't. I've got a student visa." She goes, "That's not good enough. We have to let you go." I'm like, "You got a what now?" What? Because I'd been there almost a year. Fucking the regulars we got were amazing. The staff was amazing. I mean, just the overall life was life was coming up Millhouse at that point. Let's put it that way. But yeah, so she's like, "Yeah, you don't have a green card, so we can't keep you here." I'm like, "Yeah, but I really had no retort to it whatsoever." And she was like, "Okay, you've got two options. You can leave now, or you can stay to the end of the shift and then leave." And I'm like, "Well, we're short staffed, so I'm not going to screw Shannon over by splitting at what was like 11:30 right at that point. We'd only been open for like an hour and a half, so I'm like, no, I'll stay and finish my shift. I don't want to fuck anybody over here. I didn't say that, but anyway. So I go back up to the front, and as I'm walking out, the DM's like, "Oh, can you send Shannon back?" I'm like, okay. So I get to the front. I'm like, "Hey, Shannon, what's her face wants to talk to you." So she goes to the back, a minute or so, comes back up, sour look on her face. I'm like, "What did she say?" She's like, "I can't tell you." I'm like, "Well, come on. What did she say?" And she was like, "She told me to make sure Dave doesn't steal anything before he leaves today." I was like, okay. Back in the day with the name tags, I ripped the name tag off like jazz singer style, threw it on the counter. I'm like, bye. I'm like, if that's the way they're going to be, then fuck you. I'm sorry. But that was a shitty, shitty thing to do. After the blood, sweat, and tears I had put into that store, holy shit. Anyway, it was fun though. One of my regulars was Macho Man Randy Savage. He'd come in every week, like clockwork. You'd see the Hummer pull up. He'd come in, looks just like Bonesaw from Spider-Man. Had the hair like combed back. Short guy too. Like he was listed during his career as like 6'2", and that guy's like 5'8". I swear to God. I mean, rest in peace, Macho Man. But he was. I'm 6'1.5", 6'2". He was not 6'2". Super nice guy though. Came in every time he would see him, he'd be like, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going?" And people would fucking lose their shit. It's funny because I'm not really into wrestling, and he'd come in and people would be like, "Oh my god, oh my god, is that?" I'm like, "Who, Macho Man?" Yeah. Oh my god. I remember Monday nights I had to close the store because everyone else was a wrestling fan and they wanted to go watch Dwayne the Rock Johnson do his thing on WWE or whatever it was on Monday night. So by default, I'd get the closing shift. Whatever. It was fun. They tried to convert me to a wrestler, into a wrestling fan. I remember going to, I think it was Heather's place once. We all went over there and she's like, "Let's watch wrestling." I'm like, "Oh god." And they were like, "Isn't this amazing?" I'm like, "Oh, it's fake as shit." Like I watched Hulk Hogan and stuff, Andre the Giant, when I was a little kid. like on WWE on Saturday afternoons and stuff, but I was never a fan. But, you know, it is what it is. I remember the one night I was standing at the counter, Macho Man comes up to me, I'm like, hey man, what's up? He goes, have you got fried green tomatoes? I was like, got what now? I'm like, I'm like, yeah, we got 3 copies in the Travis section. He goes, all right, thanks. I was like, Jesus Christ, of all the fucking movies we've got here, and that's the one he asked for? Ugh, I don't know. I remember another funny story from the Florida days. Mike Alstad, who used to play fullback for the Buccaneers, and this was the year they won the fucking Super Bowl. He was a customer. I never met him, but apparently he was a customer, and he was on the late call list one day for overdue movies. And I'm the one doing the calls. So I get to his name. I'm like, hey, Mike Alstad. It's like, yeah, I was just playing against him in Madden last night. I'm like, okay, phone number. Da, 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 da. Ring, 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 ring. All of a sudden you hear, Raymond James Stadium. How can I help you? I'm like, I'm looking for Mike Alstad. She goes, sorry, we can't connect you to players. I'm like, okay, well, this is Blockbuster. Can you tell him to return his movie? Hung up the phone, put his account on hold for proper phone number. Because I'm like, well, you can't put the box office as your fucking contact number. Sorry, that's not how it works. I don't care who you are. But, yeah, whatever. But, yeah. So, after that, it was 2007. And I started at the store in Pickering, which was my last Blockbuster. Literally. But, yeah, started as a shift lead, and then got promoted to AM. And right about a year after I got promoted to AM is when shit hit the fan totally. Because, as you well know, I mean, yeah, 2000 Blockbuster had the chance to buy Netflix for $50 million, and they laughed in their faces and said, "There's no way your company's worth that much. Go fuck yourself." And we all know what happened there. That did have a part to do with the company going under. Another big part that a lot of people don't point to is the late fees. When they scrapped late fees, that was just like whoosh, chopping the legs out from under them, because those fees were gravy. Customers fucking hated them, obviously, but that was easy money. Like the fucking dollar for not rewinding your shit. Remember that? Yeah, like fucking just low hanging fruit. They were living off that for a fucking while. That was a big majority of their revenue, late fees. And when they axed those, that really fucked them. But at the same time, streaming was taking off, especially by the '07 mark here. I remember when I got hired in Pickering, I was talking to the district manager. I'm like, so when are we getting like a website or something like that happening? He's like, oh, well, we're not looking into that. I was like, oh. So, but we were doing really well. That's the thing. The stores in the U.S. filed for bankruptcy protection because there were so goddamn many of them. Like it's like Tim Hortons up here in Canada. You fucking Blockbuster every 2 blocks kind of thing. So they had way too many stores to begin with. And whenever they had an underperforming store that wasn't doing well, they just opened another store. And it's like, let's not fix the problem. Let's just add to it. The franchise stores were doing really well because they weren't. Corporate was weird because they had a relegated list of movies you were allowed to have in the store, and you could not waver from that one bit. I can remember getting movies in on trade-in. Like we had somebody traded in all 6 of the Star Trek movies on DVD, and I was looking at our inventory. I'm like, fuck, we don't have these for rent. Are you kidding me? And this was right before the new 2009 Trek flick was coming out. So I'm like, screw it. Let's put them from PRP to BSI. And pop them out there, put an end cap shelf with them on there, and they were renting like fucking hotcakes. A week later, we get a pull report for movies they want to get us to get rid of and sell off. And lo and behold, all 6 Star Trek movies are on there because, hey, we're not supposed to have them. And it's like, wait a second, who the fuck is organizing this fucking idiocy? So luckily, I had a store manager who gave me basically carte blanche to order whatever I wanted to order if I thought it was going to rent. So I fucking took that store and remodeled it in ways that I don't think they'd seen for eons. When I started there, we had no horror section. The horror movies were mashed in with action, and we had a lot of customers coming in that were big horror fans. So I said to my DM one day, I'm like, can I pull someone aside with me and we'll just make a horror section? And she was like, okay. So we did that, and it didn't stop there. The next thing we did, we had the Blu-rays were coming in big for rentals now. So we had a whole Blu-ray section, like BSI, like all stock titles and stuff like that. The new release Blu-rays would be on the wall with the new release DVDs. But then I had a back to school section, which, fuck, that was so popular. Remember those movies you'd have to watch in high school, like Lord of the Flies and Great Gatsby and shit like that? These kids would come in and they were like, I missed class the other day and they watched this movie. Do you have it? And I'm like, yeah, right down there in that section. And they were like, thank God, man. We had an Oscars section where I had like the best picture winners in order for rent. We had a concert section. We had a stand-up comedy section. I can't remember what other ones we had. We did custom end caps all the time with like staff top picks and stuff like that. Like the store was insanely well organized, and people were coming from like Scarborough and like areas like that to our store because we had all the shit, and it was fucking amazing. But then, of course, lo and behold, the first thing that happened was we got a wind kiosk in our damn store. And we knew that was the beginning of the end because we'd already been selling lunch boxes and fucking water bottles and stuff. I'm like, why the fuck are we selling alarm clocks? Like, we're not Radio Shack. What's going on? So at that point, the U.S. company was in the shit because of the bankruptcy, and they had not yet been bought out by Dish. So the whole thing happened is they made up this is what railroaded the Canadian franchises. U.S., when they went tits up and went bankrupt, made a deal with the studios, like Warner Brothers, Paramount, Fox, Disney, all that shit, to keep getting the rentals for the inventory for the stores so they can keep churning out the rentals to try to make some money. So they were like, okay, we'll do that, but if you fuck us on this, then you owe us. And the U.S. company's like, well, if that happens, you can take the Canadian branch of the company and do what you want with them. They're worth what we owe you in the debt. So we were basically cannon fodder for the fucking U.S. company. Our Canadian branch of Blockbuster was actually doing relatively well, for it being a physical media store in the 2000s and almost 2010 era here. However, when Dish bought the US branch, they were like, we don't give a shit about Canada because we can't get the Dish network up there because of whatever restrictions, blah 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 blah. So fuck those Canadians. And they basically fed us to the studios to pay the debt that they ran up. And that was when the official final nail in the coffin went in for Blockbuster, and everything went down the tubes. Quite honestly, it was a case. There was basically the franchise stores in the US were doing really well because they were working along the same model we were for our store. Like if the customers want the movie and there's enough demand for it, fuck it. What's the movie cost? $20? Let's order 3 copies in, put them on the shelves, rent them for $5 a pop. In 2 weeks, we made our money back. I remember the Russell Peters Black, White, and Red tour. It was available on DVD. The DVD came with a CD of the actual show. So for some reason, we weren't allowed to get it. It was in our system, But no. So I ordered a couple of copies in. And within about a month, we put them on the new release wall too. So they were a premium price. 2 night rentals. We made our money back within about 2 days or 3 days of that fucking stuff being. No, 3 days. 2 copies. Doing the math. It was about a month, say. I think I looked at it after about 2 months and there were about 78 rents per for some weird, like, unbelievable. And other store managers were like bitching at me, going, "You're not supposed to have that on the shelf." I'm like, "It rents, whatever. Customers are asking for it. The customers are always right," as the old adage goes. Not always, but we know. But yeah, so that's basically the black and the white of what happened to Blockbuster. I mean, it was a great place to work. Still talk to a lot of the people I worked with in the Pickering store. Still have great memories, and you know, it was a fun job. I mean, fuck. I remember, what was it, 2007? I was making $1,000 bi-weekly for basically doing not much. I mean, I'd sit there and talk to people about movies, and oh, new inventory comes in, okay, scan all the inventory, get it in, put it wherever. Price changes, yeah, do that. But it was a fun job, and I mean, if it hadn't been for the U.S. branch fucking backstabbing us, then maybe we would still be in business, but who knows. One thing I will recommend, if anybody is really interested and wants to do a deep dive on all this stuff, there's a book I bought on Amazon um, called Built to Fail, written by Alan Payne. Um, Goes through the entire history from 85 onward of what happened with Blockbuster. And not a huge long book, but very interesting if you have any inkling and interest in what happened with all the behind the scenes stuff. Like, there's a whole thing about what happened with Netflix. Like I said, I just superficially talked about it, but it's an interesting book if you get a chance to read it. But yeah. Anyway, let me post this video up. I got an idea or two for some other videos down the road here, but trying to get the subscriber base. So tell your friends, subscribe, like. We'll catch you on the next video.